Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week we're going over UFC Vegas 13, headlined by Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira in a pivotal light heavyweight bout. Unfortunately, it's not going to be for the number one contender to Jan Blachowicz, since Dana White just announced that Israel Adesanya is moving up to 205 to try to capture a second title. But still, nonetheless, I think that the winner of this fight finds themselves to be the next contender whenever those guys decide to fight. But it's still a fight that I'm very much looking forward to. I know a lot of people are excited to see Thiago Marreta Santos step back into the cage, as am I. I think it should be a really fun fight, and it could be interesting to see how... Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my best fight odds here so I can give you guys a quick intro in terms of what I think about the card. But yeah, it should be good to see how he comes back and reacts. And he's a minus 230 favorite as of right now. A lot of people are really in belief of Thiago Santos after coming back from a pretty severe ACL injury. But I'll get into that during the breakdowns for this fight. But the rest of the card, not too bad. We got Brendan Allen against Ian Heinisch in a very, very close fight, hence the pick'em line there. Xaionan trying to staple herself into the contendership of the 115-pound division against Claudia Gadelha. That's a great fight. Tanner Boser trying to take another step forward as well against Andrei Arlovski. The return of King Kong Romanov fighting Marcos Rogerio de Lima. That was a fight that was supposed to happen back in September. Bevon Lewis versus Trevin Giles. Khalid Taha versus Raoni Barcelos should be a great fight. I'm really much looking forward to that. I love me some Barcelos, and I can't wait to see him continue to ascend in his division there. So, solid card. Good fights all around. A couple of snoozers potential there, you know what I mean? I'm not going to call them out right away, but overall, I don't mind this card for a fight night. And again, obviously, we get a pretty high level light heavyweight belt to top it all off. So, solid card coming up for sure. Before we get into breakdowns, just do a quick recap of UFC Vegas 12, where we ended up very, very slightly in the green. But thanks to, a couple of degenerate parlays and all that, I still end up pretty good on the night. I'm happy with how the night went, considering pretty much every single favorite won except one. But let's start off at the top. Let's start off with the lock of the night play. I had Sean Strickland minus 245 for 5 units. I hit that a week before the event. That's the advantages people have for being on the Patreon, because they get some of these lines that might get steamed come fight week. So if you're on the Patreon, if you're on Team MMA LOT and Patreon, you guys get all the heads up for the spots that I'm looking at when the lines are a lot better. So make sure you guys check that out. But yeah, Sean Strickland goes in there, does what he does. I was hoping that he'd go for the takedowns a little bit more, try to get Marchman down and maybe try to submit him, use his brown belt. He didn't give a shit at all. He wanted to test out his stand-up against a heavy hitter against Jack Marshman, and Jack pretty much ate every single thing that Sean Strickland threw at him, but Strickland still goes out there and gets a solid decision victory, so good win there. Dog of the night play, we had under 2.5 in that Strickland and Marshman fight. Obviously, like I said, Jack Marshman did not fall. Fall, Jack, fall. Just as Sean Strickland wanted him to, screaming pretty much that entire fight. So that goes by the wayside. I will say a little bit of an asterisk. I was going to be playing the under 2.5 for Priscilla Cachoeira and Courtney Casey. That was at like plus 215, plus 220. I thought that had a solid chance of hitting. Unfortunately, Priscilla Cachoeira, I think, has weight cutting issues or something, and that fight gets canceled on weigh-in day, so that kind of sucks. And then lastly, or at least I should say second lastly, I had a parlay of Alexander Hernandez and Andre Fili. Hernandez goes out there and absolutely squashes Chris Grutzbacher with a beautiful combination, beautiful footwork, beautiful striking. And Hernandez is definitely back now. And then Fili goes out there and, going 1-1 into that third round. Bryce Mitchell took it to that extra gear, got the takedowns that he needed to grind out Andre Fili, and he looked great. I always questioned Bryce Mitchell's cardio. I won't question it in a 3-rounder any longer. In a 5-rounder, I would like to see what it looks like then. But in a 3-rounder, it seems like he has that extra gear to go out there, get the takedowns needed, and use his jiu-jitsu effectively to be able to capture a third round. So good one for Bryce Mitchell there. Unfortunate loss for us there, minus 1 unit. So all in all for Vegas 12, we're plus 0.04 units. Very, very minimal. But leading into UFC Vegas 13, I do have a live parlay right now. So I did have Adrian Yanez, who hit, Kevin Holland, who hit both of them very, very easy. Let's just call it what it is. And I have them all parlayed up with Tanner Boser, who fights on this upcoming card. So I have that 2 units at -110. I love the line on that. Obviously, I knew Giannis and Holland were pretty much a lock. Hence why I parlayed them with Boser, who I believe -250, not too bad of a line, but I wanted to get a better line on him there, and I love the even money that I'm getting here on this parlay. So you guys will obviously hear my thoughts on Tanner Boser versus Andrei Arlovski later in this episode, so make sure you guys stick around for that. But yeah, plus 0.04 units on Vegas 12 with a pending parlay. I'm okay with that. It's still green. It's not red, and that's what we're always trying to avoid. So decent UFC Vegas 12. Happy that the lock of the night plays are hitting nice and consistently now. That's really about it. Before I get into the breakdowns here, I do want to plug the Patreon as always. The numbers are killing it. We're up to the 120s, 130s. My goal is 200. I know we're going to hit 200 eventually. How quickly, I'm not sure. But I know the more that we win, the more exposure your boy gets, the sooner that we'll hit that Patreon number that I'm trying to get to. So shout out to everybody on that. Again, just a reminder for anybody that's on that or not on that and on the bubble of getting on it, you guys get early access to all the breakdowns that you guys are about to see. As you will see, they were previously recorded. So as soon as I finish recording them, I drop them on the Patreon so they get first access to it. I also let you guys know what my leans are nice and early as soon as the odds drop. So even if there's some solid value before I actually get down to researching it, you guys could take advantage of the lower limits at times, especially if there's egregious lines out there, or opening lines, I should say. You guys get all the official bets, even when I'm charging the public. And then lastly, you guys get a best bets and props article where I let you know the best bet and prop for every single fight on the card. That usually comes out Friday evenings. But yeah, people love it. It's a ton of value you guys get for $5 a month. Very, very cheap. But I'm not trying to undervalue my work or anything like that, but I understand that people don't want to break the bank either to get solid betting advice. And that's what I'm trying to prove to you guys and provide to you guys. And I know I can get a big enough group together to allow me to make this a full-time thing. So $5 a month, help your boy out, and you guys can continue to get access. And once I'm able to break the chains of my 9 to 5, you bet your ass I'm going to add more content to the Patreon once I am able to get more time for myself. And lastly, I swear to God, before I jump into the breakdowns, I want to give a quick shout out to Odds HQ, who brought me on this past week for their Friday stream with Cody Safdie, MMA guru or predictions guru, and Just Bleed MMA. Those guys are fantastic. I'm pretty much a permanent spot there now. That seat is mine now. So I'm going to be on every Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern with those guys, breaking down the final weigh-in, giving our final thoughts on the cards. Make sure you guys check us out on Odds HQ. We're always going to be there Friday evening. I can't wait to do it. It's a live stream as well, too. So you guys can hop in the chat and try to interact as much as possible. And then obviously my own MMA Lockcast live that I do, that's going to be every fight day now, 1 p.m. Eastern, every single fight day, doing a 1 hour live stream, just answering all questions, comments, last minute things that you guys have. It's a fun, interactive way. It's pretty much a show all about you guys. You guys make the show by the comments and questions and everything that you guys submit through the live chat. So be sure to join me every fight day, I should say, at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll always be tweeting out the link, so make sure you guys check that out. All right. I'm just going to shut up. Let's get into the breakdowns. That's what you guys are here for. Let's get into this. Max Griffin versus Ramiz Brahimaj. We got -165 on Max Griffin and +145 on Brahimaj. Griffin opened up roughly around -195, and now he's down to -165. Fight doesn't go to decision is +125. And if you know anything about Ramiz Brahimaj, that guy does not like going to a decision. He's won, so he's 8-2, and all 8 wins have come via submission. He's always seeking the choke. Like, he's always seeking any type of submission, but he loves his guillotine choke. He loves the arm triangle choke. And it's always fun to see him go out there and try to pull off those types of submissions. It's been a while since he's been in the cage, though. So the last time he fought was March of 2019. Now here we upcoming, what is that? 8 + 12. We got 20-month layoff. And not to his, it's not obviously his fault. He was actually scheduled to fight Miguel Beza on the Contender Series in 2019. He had to pull out due to injury. Then he was called in to fight Takashi Sato June on the Poirier and Hooker card. Unfortunately, he had to pull out because of his cornerman testing positive for COVID. And now here he is back once again 5 months later, I should say, close to 5 months later, since he was booked to fight Takashi Sato against Max Griffin. I don't like when guys are out of the cage for that long. You know what I mean? Especially when they're coming in to make their UFC debut, especially against a guy as experienced and as skilled as Max Griffin. So that's a no-no right off the bat. A positive I will give him, he's training over there at Fortis MMA, who in my opinion is one of the higher ranked gyms in the world right now. Maybe not have a super camp like the Jacksons or the ATTs of the world, but they do have quality head coaches and quality bodies and sparring partners as well for those guys to go out there and get some solid experience and practice in the training room. This fight's a tough one for Ramiz, excuse me. So the last time he went to a decision, he lost to Justin Patterson. We saw his gas tank start to fail him in that second round. And when I see guys that have gas tank issues, no matter how many times they've gone out there and finished a fight, it gives me some issues, especially when you're talking about a guy going up against Max Griffin, who hasn't been submitted in his career at all. I think the last time, actually, I may be wrong on that. He did get, he got submitted in an exhibition fight for the Ultimate Fighter back in 2012 by Matt Secor via triangle choke. But since then, the only time he lost via stoppage was to Colby Covington back in 2016. But since then, he's just been going to decisions pretty much. His chin has held up against heavy hitters like Curtis Millender, Thiago Alves, Alex Morono. You know what I mean? Say what you want about Morono, but he does has heavy hands for sure. And then Alex Oliveira, he did a good job in staying resilient in that fight, battling back after a very, very tough cut that he had to deal with too, I believe in that second round. And in that third round, he ends up on top after reversing Cowboy Oliveira. Unfortunately, he still comes out on the poor or the unfortunate end of a split decision. He right now in his last 5, he's 1-4 in his last 5, and his only win was a majority decision over Zlim Imadaev in a fight where I believe Imadaev was had a point taken away pretty much right in the beginning of the fight. I like Griffin in this fight. Again, more experience. Ramiz, I need to see a little bit more from his game rather than just being a finisher. I always have question marks about guys coming into the UFC where all their finishes in the past have been or all the wins have been by, early finishes. Whereas guys like, Max Griffin, he's been to the full 15 minutes. He's been the entire time where he doesn't have to worry about being finished or anything like that. I like Max Griffin here. Maybe not at the minus 165 line. I don't think he's the shit or anything like that, but I still need to see what we're working with Brahimaj. He is a no-gi IBJJF champion, so that's something to keep your eye on as well in terms of his submission game. But I just don't see him submitting Max Griffin, who again has not been submitted in a very long time. I like Griffin to win this fight. I probably won't put any money on this fight though. If anything, I wouldn't mind seeing what the fight doesn't go to decision is plus 125. Maybe the under 2.5 is not that bad. Then again, Griffin has gone to a decision a lot in his last couple of fights, and I could see him kind of playing it as safe as possible. Especially going to a decision against Cowboy Oliveira, who I believe is just as wild and chaotic as Ramiz Brahimaj can be at times. I do like Max Griffin to win this fight. I'll say by third round TKO after overwhelming Brahimaj in that third. Very, very tough way to get a read on this fight. But I do like Griffin via third round stoppage or even a decision victory. Darren Elkins versus Eduardo Garagorri. We got minus 210 on the damage and plus 175 on Garagorri. And on first look, when I saw this fight announced, or at least when I saw the odds come out, I'm like, minus 200 or better for Elkins, or minus 200 or worse for Elkins is a little bit of a head scratcher. You don't really expect him to go out there and be a favorite, or at least a super heavy favorite against pretty much anybody in the UFC. But once you really start to dig into the tape, then you really start to understand it. So let's start off with Darren Elkins, though. He is coming off a 4-fight losing streak. That is obviously a career worst run for him. There was a point in time where he put together a solid amount of victories. Robert Whiteford, Chas Skelly, Godofredo Pepe, Mirsad Bektic, Dennis Bermudez, Michael Johnson. 6 straight fights, 6 straight victories with 2 finishes mixed in there. And now he's gone on a 4-fight skid to Alexander Volkanovski. You can't really blame him for that. Hence, Alexander Volkanovski being the champion. Ricardo Lamos, that was a tough fight for Darren Elkins, where he was just pretty much outworked in every single aspect of that fight and every single skill. Ryan Hall, we obviously know the wizard that Ryan Hall is, and then Nate Landwehr, who was willing to go to war with Darren Elkins, and he just showed that he was a faster fighter, had the better output, had the better shots, and again had the better power at the end of the day, which allowed for way more damage on Darren Elkins than on Nate Landwehr. So that was a fun fight to watch, super, super bloody. But it showed us that Darren Elkins is his durability is still there. Like, he ate some shots from Nate Landwehr, but was still cheering and running forward and was still fully in the fight. I think that might scare a guy like Eduardo Garagorri, who hasn't really come across a guy like Darren Elkins before, but when it really comes to the actual skill set of each guy here, I think the one thing that's glaring on Eduardo's side is his lack of takedown defense. And that's why everybody seems so heavy on Darren Elkins here. And I completely understand it after running the tape now. We saw Humberto Bandone, who's primarily a striker, go out there and try to take down a Garagorri, and he was successful in it, but I think that we'll see better top pressure and at least more consistent takedown attempts from Darren Elkins than we saw from Bandone, hence why Eduardo Garagorri was able to keep that fight on the feet for the majority of it and do some solid damage from there. We saw Ricardo Ramos go out there, get the takedown, get the rear naked choke, and that's as simple as that. But even when you go back into earlier fights for Garagorri, yeah, he's getting victories and he's undefeated on the regional scene. But you do see when he's challenged in those grappling realms, he's a little bit more, he's not responding as well. Yeah, he has a couple of rear naked choke victories over some of these guys, but he's fighting guys with a lot of sketchy records as well. So when he's pulling off, rear naked chokes against guys that are like 6-15, you kind of understand what the hell is up. The concern here is, like what I saw in the Bandonai fight, what I saw in the Ricardo Ramos fight, is his lack of ability to really, he's looking to strike to defend rather than actually like digging under hooks and doing those simple technical things to get out of these bad situations. He's still training down there in Uruguay, it seems, doesn't really go out there and look for other things. Going through his Instagram page, the only time he's really made a trek out, or at least showcased that he's made a trek out to a top gym, was back in 2017 when we saw him have a couple pictures down there at Novo União. I'm not sure if he's really traveled to the States and try to get like work out there, but it seems like he's okay with, sticking in his home base down in Uruguay. And I think that's a problem. You need to expand the variety of looks that you're getting, the type of advice that you're getting, the head coaches that you're working with. You really need to go out there and do that, especially at this high level in the MMA world. And I think this might be the rude awakening for him against Darren Elkins, where, most guys should go out there and be able to beat Darren Elkins at this point in his career, especially an up-and-comer like Eduardo Garagorri. But I think he's going to see that the takedowns are going to be a little bit too much. The cardio is always going to be there for Darren Elkins, and the heart is always going to be there for Elkins. My concern is if, this is the day that it just, like that, catches up with him, Garagorri lands a bomb and just puts out Elkins with one shot. I don't think that's going to happen. Elkins is hittable, but he's going to have to be sure to cut the distance right away and start putting this fight into the grappling realm, because that's definitely where he's going to have the advantage. So I like Elkins here. I don't mind him at the minus 200 range. Possible parlay piece if you don't want to play him straight up, but he should definitely cruise here in terms of, out grappling Garagorri. Outside of, getting his back taken or like getting subbed that way, I just don't see Elkins finding himself in those positions. So I do like Elkins to win this fight. I think he will have the better of the grappling exchanges, and that's what it's going to come down to. It's just a speed advantage that Garagorri will have here, and possible power advantage too, that makes me a little bit skeptical about Elkins. Outside of that, though, I think Elkins should be able to drown Garagorri here and continuously take him down and just work from on top. So I'm going with Elkins to win this fight via decision, and the minus 200 line sounds about right. So once again, Darren Elkins via decision. Marcos Rogerio de Lima versus Alexander Romanov. We got minus 275 on Alexander and plus 235 on Rogerio de Lima. So let's not forget when they were first originally scheduled to fight each other. I believe it was early September. De Lima obviously pulled out due to a positive COVID test pretty much the day of the fight. That line was much, much closer. And now when people actually saw Romanov go out there and have a complete smashing one-sided fight against Rocky Martinez, everybody's jumping on the Alexander Romanov train, and it absolutely makes sense. I know that Romanov is a heavy favorite now. People are saying that he's actually able to translate, the style that he had on the regional scene over there on the Asian and European side of the world. He's actually able to translate that into a UFC performance against, in my opinion, a much tougher test in Rocky Martinez than Marcos Rogerio de Lima would be. And I mean that in terms of durability. We did see Martinez survive close to a full 2 rounds. It was, near the ending there that Romanov was able to pull off that arm triangle choke. Beautiful finish there. But he, from the get-go, he let it be known that he is going to continue to fight the way that he always fights. He's going to charge forward. He's going to try to get you down, whether it's a big slam or even just a small trip. He's going to get you down, and then he's going to start to King Kong hammer fist you from the top. If he's not able to get the finish, he's fine with just pacing himself, landing the picking apart shots that he is around the guard. He's not afraid to go from full mount to side control to knee on belly to try to get the best possible angle that he can to go for the finish. And then if the punches aren't doing enough, he's going to go for a choke, and that's definitely a path to victory for him there. There is nothing that I see that Marcos Rogerio de Lima can do to finish or beat Alexander Romanov. Obviously, outside of a Hail Mary one punch or anything like that, I don't see him catching Romanov with a submission of any sort. I don't think he's going to be able to pull off a guillotine or anything like that. Heck, he even got guillotine choked by Gadzhimurad Antagulov a couple of fights ago via guillotine. Let's just remember that. That's probably one of the worst losses that you could have on your record. So to go in there against a guy like Romanov, I think he's completely outskilled, completely outmatched. And if you guys do go back and listen to my initial breakdown of this fight, I was a little bit skeptical of Romanov. I didn't know if we were truly going to see what we saw on tape once he arrives to the UFC. And now I'm fully sold. Again, he did it against a much more durable fighter in Rocky Martinez, and he looked great doing it too. He had absolutely no issues taking down Rocky Martinez, who was chubby. That's just being nice. So I don't think he'll have much issue taking Rogerio de Lima down here, slamming him over his head if he wants to as well. But I think this is an absolute shellacking waiting to happen for Mr. Alexander Romanov. I was thinking that Boser was going to be my biggest lean on this card, but man, Alexander Romanov makes it hard to not want to bet this guy. So what I'm personally going to wait for is the inside the distance line to come out. I'm sure by the time that does come out, him straight at minus 275 will probably be all the way up to the minus 350, minus 400 range, leading me to believe that we'll probably get Romanov minus 150 or something, minus 200 inside the distance. And that's the line that I'm going to be trying to hammer. I know I will get a better line on the inside the distance than I will on him straight, so I might as well wait. There's no need to rush the pick here. And again, I'm recording this on the Tuesday before their fight week, so there's a ton of time between now and when the props are going to drop, and then obviously we'll see the line pretty much jump in that amount of time as well. So, if you want to parlay him, go ahead and parlay him. But he's as close to a lock of the night as you're going to get, in my opinion. So I'm really looking for, especially him inside the distance. I don't see this going 15 minutes. He doesn't look like a guy that's just, walling and stalling or just trying to lay in prey or anything like that. This guy is going for the finish from bell to bell. He wants to tear your head off pretty much, or pound your face into the canvas. He wants to do one or the other, or even just choke you unconscious. That's another thing too. Roque Martinez got away with a phantom tap near the ending of that first round when Romanov had a pretty tight Kimura or Americana, one of those submissions, locked up. It looked really, really tight. It looked really close. And if you watch one of Roque Martinez's hands, it looked like he was about to tap. He even tapped once, it looked like. And the ref, you could see the shoes of the ref kind of like, hesitating to go in and stop the fight because Rocky only just tapped once. But either way, Romanov should go out there and do absolute work against De Lima. De Lima, again, has a little bit of power in his hands, has some solid leg kicks, but I don't think this fight is going to be contested much on the feet, and I think Romanov is absolutely going to shit on the level of jiu-jitsu that Rogerio de Lima is going to be bringing to this fight. So I love Romanov in this spot. I think he gets it done in the first round. I find it hard to believe. Realistically, this line should be like minus 500. Let's be honest. I don't know what people are seeing in Lima. I'm hoping some people go out there and bet him, so maybe we even get a better line on Romanov. But I find it really, really hard to see the tape, look at the tape, and I'm not even trying to do any recency bias for Romanov here. Yeah, he looked great in the Roque Martinez fight, but he's looked good in every single fight. The only thing I needed to see the Roque Martinez fight was to see if he was able to translate that to his UFC debut, and that's when he did it. That's when the UFC jitters are at their highest. He was able to go out there and just perform like he always performs, go out there and crush dudes, and that's exactly what I'm expecting him to do here against Rogerio de Lima, who, in my opinion, has a very limited path to victory. So I'm going to go with Alexander Romanov to win this fight inside the distance. I'll say first round ground and pound, maybe even submission. But I love him to get it done nice and early. And he will more than likely be involved in the lock of the night play for this card. So Alexander Romanov via first round finish. Bevon Lewis versus Trevin Giles. We got minus 110 on both sides. It's a pick'em fight. Bevon Lewis did actually open as the favorite, and money has slowly coming in on Trevin Giles to even it out. Let's start off with Bevon Lewis, who's coming off a victory over Dequan Townsend. Just like his counterpart, they're both 1-2 in their last 3 fights on a 2-fight skid, and they just recently turned their fortunes around. So like I said with Bevon Lewis, he was doing very well in his UFC debut against Uriah Hall. We saw what it looks like when he's able to put his punches together, especially at distance. And even in the clinch positions, he seems to have a little bit of success with like pushing his opponents up against the cage, kind of Charlie horsing them, kneeing them, controlling them in that state. But then we saw it could have been either UFC jitters or him just exerting too much energy in the first 2 rounds. But we did definitely see Bevon Lewis slow down a little bit in that 3rd round. And that's where we saw Uriah Hall go out there and land a beautifully timed combination that put him out. And that's always been Uriah Hall's forte. You know what I mean? Just conserving his energy, and then landing a big enough shot to be able to put out his opponents, just as we saw this past weekend against Anderson Silva. And then in the Darren Stewart fight, we saw Darren Stewart, way more comfortable in the striking range compared to what Bevon Lewis was doing, especially with those low kicks. Darren Stewart was doing a lot of solid work there, solid work up against the cage too. It seemed like Bevon was a little bit outstrength there. But we definitely saw Bevon Lewis stumble there. And then in Dequan Townsend, Townsend is strictly in the UFC to give, do the jobber role for most of these guys. And he did exactly that for Bevon Lewis. We didn't see any urgency out of Townsend. He never really had any success in that fight. We saw Bevon have solid success from landing on the outside, really in the distance that he's comfortable from. But the majority of that fight was him just trying to play it as safe as possible, push Dequan up against the cage and kind of just, outwork him there, landing little shots, landing knees, whatever it is, just to stay busy and really chip away and grab some points against Dequan Townsend, hence why he came out on the other end with a decisive decision victory there. Decisive decision? That sounds like some Mike Goldberg shit. But he doesn't do anything that really blows my hair back either. I like his range. I like his size. He seemed to have potential, but I think he's not really going to be a top 15, top 10 type of guy. But yet he seems to have a little bit more promise than what Trevin Giles brings to the cage. So with Trevin Giles, like I said, just like Bevon Lewis, 1-3 in his last 2. Most recently coming over a split decision victory over James Krause, where let's not forget, that night, Trevin Giles was actually supposed to fight Antonio Arroyo. Arroyo pulls out due to weight cutting issues, and in steps James Krause, who was there that night, I believe, to he was supposed to corner somebody else that night. I want to say Alex Morono, but I might be off on that. He was supposed to be there to corner Yusuf Zalal, actually. And he steps in now against Trevin Giles and put on a solid performance. Like, arguably, you could give that fight to James Krause. There's a lot of people out there that thought that was especially a James Krause fight, and the sketchiest of them all was the round 1 being scored for Trevin Giles by one of the judges. I think it was Joe Solis, who, if people actually start to look into it a little bit more, and it turned out that Joe Solis has a little bit of a tie to Trevin Giles. So that's a little bit sketchy in itself. So arguably, you could say that Trevin Giles is 0-3 in his last 3 and probably shouldn't even be getting a 4th shot in the UFC. I was a little bit underwhelmed with his performance in the 3rd round against a guy who literally took the fight on less than 24 hours notice. He seemed a little bit gassed himself, and I thought James Krause did enough to win that third round. So, 1-3 easily James Krause, and round 2 obviously Trevin Giles, but I was not impressed at all what I saw with Trevin Giles. He always seems to have little slip-ups in the third round. Zach Cummings, Gerald Mearshart. He did, before the Zach Cummings fight, he did want to fight in the third round against Antonio Braga Neto. That was back in December of 2017. So we're talking about 3 years ago. But I don't know what it is. He seems to be on a little bit of a decline. Bevon Lewis, 29 coming into this. Wow. Trevin Giles is 28. So 1 year advantage for Bevon Lewis in terms of experience, or at least age, I should say. But neither guy does much to really make me want to go out there and risk money on them. You know what I mean? Like, I could see both guys dropping this. The side that I feel most comfortable with after looking through the tape and all that is actually the Bevon Lewis side, and that's weird to say. I've lost faith in Bevon Lewis. I've lost faith in Trevin Giles. I wouldn't trust either of them with my money here, but you guys are here to figure out who I would predict to win. And I'd have to go with Bevon Lewis. I think he would have the better of the exchanges from the outside in terms of like distance striking, mixing some kicks, mixing some punches, start using that footwork and get Trevin Giles working. Push him up against the cage, knee him just like you did at Daquan Townsend, and just how you had some success against Uriah Hall, the same thing. Use that type of game plan. Trevin Giles is a purple belt on the ground, so I'm not sure if you'd want to try to drag this to the ground and see what Bevon Lewis has off of his back. We haven't seen too much of that in the UFC, but I still think it's going to be Bevon Lewis. I wouldn't risk any money on it myself. I do think that Bevon Lewis will be the one getting the better from the distance striking, the clinch positions. He should be able to keep it on the feet. And I could see Trevin Giles being a little bit more gassed than Lewis come the third round, and that's where we'll see Lewis really start to implement his strength and that clinch position to secure a victory. So, very, very tough fight to call. Another one, there's Brendan Allen against Ian Heinisch later in this card, which is just as tough to call. But with these guys are definitely lower level than them, and I'll say that. And I'll say also that Bevon Lewis deserves the victory here. So I'm going to say Bevon Lewis to win this fight via decision, but not with the utmost confidence. Giga Chikadze versus Jamey Simmons. We got minus 485 on Giga Chikadze and plus 350 on the UFC newcomer Jamey Simmons. Why they made this fight, I have absolutely no idea. The only thing I could come up with is the fact that this fight card was at 10 fights. They had Felipe Colares and Gustavo Lopez fall out, so they wanted to keep it at 10 fights or at least at 11. And it makes absolutely no sense as to why they signed Jamey Simmons. So let's start off with Jamey Simmons. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He got 2 quick victories in November and December of last year. Quick finishes, both of them coming with pretty much within a minute. 36 seconds for the first one, a minute and 4 seconds for the other one. But there unfortunately is no tape on the second last fight. I do have footage on his Cody Garnis fight, Terrence Almond, and then Morgan Sickinger, which is his last fight. Let's go quickly one by one. The Cody Garnis one, that one looked like the kid just was out of his league. Jamey Simmons goes out there, slams the kid, and it looks like his head kind of hits the canvas, and he's kind of not out, but like pretty much given up at that point. And we see Jamey Simmons follow up with some ground and pound to get the victory there. And then the Terrence Almond fight, like he just pretty much ragdolled that guy. But there were some sketchy moments when, Almond was able to reverse positions pretty much with no technique. He just pretty much strengthed his way out of it. It was pretty much, or muscled his way out of it. There's no way that there was any technique used in that. But for the most part, Jamey Simmons was the one on top, doing some solid damage, so he was able to go out there and get the decision victory. After that, he got kneed in 13 seconds at LFA. Then he goes on his 2-fight winning streak. And then the most recent one I have is Morgan Sickinger, where there's only a minute of footage, so it's not a lot to get into there. But that was as soon as Jamey landed a big shot, it seemed like Morgan wanted out of there, and Jamey was able to get the victory. Let's talk a little bit more about Jamey. So his background is wrestling, and I did go through his like I Googled his name with his wrestling background, and I found something from the University of Wisconsin, I believe it is. Let me see if I can pull that up for you guys one more time. Probably should have had that ready to go, but here we go. University of Wisconsin. So what they have on Jamey Simmons is they have his high school. They say he's a 3-time letter winner, 3-time first-time all-conference wrestler, 2-time state qualifier. Highest finish was 4th. Hold school record for takedowns in a season and career, and most wins in a career. Only athlete to be first-team all-conference in 3 sports, football, wrestling, and baseball, for 2 consecutive years. And then he has the highest winning percentage in school history, which is 118 and 14 in wrestling. Then in his 2011-2012 campaign at University of Iowa, he went 4-5 at 149 pounds, finished 3rd in the Wisconsin States, I want to call it, I believe it is. And then in 2012-2013, he wrestled at 157 pounds and finished the season with a 22-12 record, 2nd team All-Wisconsin honoree. So, it's obvious that he wants to go out there and wrestle. That's kind of his game plan. Unfortunately for him, like he hasn't really found his weight class. And given his size, he's standing at 5'5". He should probably be a 135er. And he has actually fought down at 135 before. I believe that was a while back though. Like he hasn't fought at 135 since, let's see. Cody Garnis was at 155. The Terrence Allman fight, so that was the fight that he won via decision. That was down at 135. Then his LFA fight was at 145, 155 for the next fight after that, and then back to 145. So he's like up and down, and obviously he's making his UFC debut now at 145 pounds against Giga Chikadze, who's a 6 foot, 145 pounder. 6 foot with 74-inch reach. Obviously, we don't have a reach yet on Jamey Simmons, but he's 5'5", so he's dealing with a pretty significant height disadvantage. Just for reference, if you guys going to want to go watch it, Giga Chikadze versus Erwin Rivera. Erwin Rivera was 5'6". So that's just something to think about there. But yeah, Giga Chikadze should absolutely style on this kid. Maybe he gets a takedown in the first round, but it doesn't seem like he has the cardio to deal with a guy like Giga Chikadze. Yeah, he's gotten a decision victory over a guy that was 5-5. Let's not read too much into that. I think he's going to have a much more difficult time, closing the distance, because he's going to have to eat a lot of kicks, a lot of punches, a lot of knees up the middle. He's going to have to eat a lot of those to try to get to the legs of Giga Chikadze and try to get him down. And then Giga, like, say what you want about him just being a kickboxer, he's done a really good job of getting back to his feet whenever he gets taken down or even slips or something like that. Like we saw in the Omar Morales fight, we saw Giga Chikadze try to pull off a judo throw of some sort, fails on that, drops, and Morales gets back on top of him. And we see Giga Chikadze use the cage very, very well, get back to his feet, and didn't really allow Omar Morales to land much from the top position either. So, even the Jamal Emmers fight, if you want to go back to that fight, he got taken down in that fight, but we see him, get back to his feet, even reverse Jamal Emmers too. That was very, very impressive in my opinion. So this is one of those spots where I was like, okay, another late minute fight put together. Giga Chikadze wasn't really even scheduled to fight anybody here. So I was kind of surprised as to why he took the fight on roughly a week's notice. Like, this got pretty much put together a week before the fight, 7 days before the fight that this got put together. So not sure why Giga wanted to take it. Probably just get another paycheck. This would be his 3rd fight in the COVID era, all within 6 months. So good for him to be able to go out there and get 3 solid paychecks. And it's looking like he's probably going to pick up a performance of the night bonus as well too. I think this is the first time we're going to see Giga Chikadze get a finish inside the octagon, and it's taken him 5 fights now to get to it, but I think this is the perfect matchup for him to go out there and get it. So I don't think Jamey Simmons has the cardio to go all 15 minutes. He's going to be struggling to try to get Giga down, and then he's just going to eat a bunch of shots on the way in. So it's going to be really tough for him to close the distance. Giga currently minus 485. I expect that to get up even higher. I'd like to see what the inside the distance looks like. For the fight to not go to decision is currently minus 195. I expect that to get a little bit juicier too. If I can get Giga Chikadze better than minus 200 to win inside the distance, I'm probably going to take at least a 2-unit shot on that to profit 1 unit. I think this is a surefire spot, just as good as Adrian Yanez over Victor Rodriguez last week, and even Charlie Ontiveros losing to Kevin Holland. I think it's kind of that level with Giga Chikadze being able to get a finish here. See, Erwin Rivera, a lot of people might give Giga Chikadze flack for not being able to finish him, but this Jamey Simmons guy is not Erwin Rivera level. And Erwin Rivera is like just UFC level. Jamey Simmons has not fought anybody near UFC level, and he's going to be in for a really rude awakening when he steps in there against a high-level fighter like Giga Chikadze. I'm expecting Giga Chikadze probably by like a highlight reel finish here. So I like Giga. I'm going to take him to win inside the distance, whether it's first or second round. I truly think he gets it done. I don't see him playing, with his food and playing patty cake from the outside. I truly think that we'll see him catch Jamey on the way in and get a beautiful finish. So I'm going with either Giga Chikadze first or second round finish. Claudia Gadelha versus Xaionan. We got minus 135 on Yan and plus 115 on Claudia Gadelha. Let's start off with Claudia Gadelha, who's coming off a victory over Angela Hill. That allowed her to start a 2-fight winning streak here now. Before that, obviously, she beat Ronda Marcos back at UFC 239. But before that, she lost to Nina Ansaroff at UFC 231, which was a little bit of an alarming loss for her. Before that, she's only ever lost to girls like Jessica Andrade and Ioana Jędrzejczyk, so that Nina Ansaroff one was kind of sticking out a little bit more than it should have. Not trying to say anything bad about Nina Ansaroff, but a lot of people expected Gadelha to go out there and just kind of wipe them out with her. She even went into that fight, I believe, as a minus 330 favorite or something like that. It was something crazy, and then I remember Nina Ansaroff pulling off that victory. Ansaroff did a solid job of keeping the fight on the feet. She did get taken down a couple times, but when she was on the feet, she was the one dishing out the damage, especially in that third round where we saw her pretty much lighting Gadelha up with her jab and a leg kick. That's pretty much all it was. Like, she was just jabbing her face off, keeping the consistency, finding the proper timing to counter her, and getting out of the way of the big shots, and obviously stuffing takedowns too. That's one thing that we've kind of seen from Claudia Gadelha as her UFC career has gone on, and for the majority of her UFC career, actually, her third rounds are definitely not her strongest. She, two judges did end up giving her the third round in the Angela Hill fight, which got her that split decision there, but it was a sketchy one. It was really close. I do think she did some good damage there, but Angela Hill, man, she just makes fights way closer than they should be because she's throwing shots out there, but they don't look like they have anything on them. And at the end of the day, I think that's truly the issue for her there. So, it was a solid fight for Gadelha, but we do see the continuous decline in her career, and now she's going up against an up and comer who's pretty much at that point where she can no longer be a prospect. She's going out there, hasn't lost a fight since her third ever fight, and now is on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fight winning streak. Or if you want to call it undefeated in her last 11, she did have a no contest against Emi Fujino due to a clash of heads. But yeah, last time around, we saw her go out there and absolutely batter Karolina Kowalkiewicz. It was almost sad to see Karolina the next day. She posted something on Instagram, how she was sad and she was like all lumped up and crying and stuff. Probably one of the worst beatings she's ever taken in her career. And all thanks to Yan Xaionan. We know that Yan's game plan is pretty much trudge forward, solid footwork as well too, but she's going to throw in combinations and she's going to throw hard with every single shot. That's something that a lot of fighters lack, is that they're throwing combinations, but they don't really throw too hard with it. And she throws a lot of power in the shots, and I think that really separates her from a lot of the fighters out there. Claudia Gadelha, she has decent stand-up. We do see her in that first round against Jessica Andrade land some great shots, even bust up Andrade with a beautiful, I believe it was an overhand right. But, she has good technique. her issue is being able to sustain that over 15 minutes. And that's where I think is where Yan's, her style and her pressure and her striking is just going to be a little bit too much for Gadelha here. I do believe like when fighters do that Kia thing, like Holly Holm and how Michelle Watterson pulled it out so sneakily in the last minute and a half of her fight against Angela Hill, I think it really does have a little bit of an effect on the judges because they believe that, okay, they're doing these loud things. That means that they're, landing a little bit more aggressively. And I don't want to say that's always the case for Yan Xiaonan. She's always landing heavy, whether she's doing the Kias or not. More often than not, she's doing the Kias. But what I'm saying is that Yan, more often than not, lands super heavy. And I think that's going to cause issues for Gadelha here. I wouldn't be surprised to see Gadelha get the takedown in the first round. But one thing that we have noticed with Gadelha is when she does get fights to the ground, she doesn't really do a really good job of keeping fighters there. Fighters do a solid job of getting back to their feet. And then Gadelha just, exerts a little bit more energy than she needs to keep these fighters down, and then it really messes with her sustainability of her gas tank for the majority of the 15 minutes. The fight where the fight with Yan Xiaonan and Angela Hill, that one's been pretty heavily debated. And even when Angela Hill went on the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan was just all on her side. He's like, oh, I thought you won that fight. I thought you won that fight. It obviously came down to round 3. And I thought that Yan did the better of the striking in terms of like more output. I think it was DC that commented on it and saying that, Angela Hill's looking for that one-shot kill, whereas Yan Xiaonan's going with the activity aspect of it. And again, it is activity, but it is damage too because she's landing heavy. Like that's a constant theme you're going to hear throughout this breakdown is the level of power that Yan goes out there and tries to throw with. They did say that she moved over to Vegas to do a little bit of work there. How she even went to the Floyd Mayweather gym to figure out how to generate more power with her punches. But if you go through her Instagram account as well a little bit, you'll notice that she's gone over to Team Alpha Male. She's in Vegas. She's doing a little bit of work there too. That was from early October. And she did post something recently saying that she just landed in Vegas, and I'm trying to figure out whether she means like, okay, landed from Vegas from China or landed in Vegas from Sacramento or wherever she was doing work in the States, because she doesn't post that often, so you don't really get to see that. But it is promising to see her go out there and actually get different looks, get good looks. I think also the whole Team Alpha Male thing comes from the partnership with Song Yadong, who we do see in a couple of her Instagram posts as well too. But it's very promising for Yan Xiaonan to go out there and get different looks and try to pick up a couple of different things. But I think if she sticks to her bread and butter of just marching opponents down and just landing combinations, and that's the difference. Like there's a difference between like marching opponents down and just throwing winging hooks, kind of like John Phillips. It's funny how I bring up John Phillips in pretty much every fucking episode, but it's pertinent. Like you see the different skills, and then there's Yan Xiaonan who marches forward, but she's throwing heavy combinations and not just hooks. She's throwing jabs, she's throwing uppercuts, she's throwing a ton of shots, and it really frustrates her opponents who are trying to close distance themselves too. But then whenever they do, they're running into these heavy shots of Yan Xiaonan. So I think it's unfortunately going to break Claudia. People keep talking about Claudia Gadelha's jiu-jitsu game. She's only subbed one person in the last 10 years. Her only submission victory came over Karolina Kovacevic. And then the majority of her submissions actually came in the first 5 or 6 fights in her professional MMA career, which we all know that's kind of a we kind of overlook that, especially when you get this far into your pro MMA career. So I do like Yan Xiaonan still. I think she's going to get it done probably by decision. I wouldn't be surprised at third round finish. I did poke a little bit on her to finish Karolina Kovacevic, and we were really, really close to that. The doctor could have easily stopped that based off of all the trouble that Karolina was having with her eye. But yeah, I'll see what the round 3 prop is for Yan Xiaonan here, but I do like her to get the victory. We did see Gadelha have a little bit of success in that third round against Angela Hill. Again, heavily contested, but I think she's going to get a lot more discouraged when she's feeling the power coming back her way compared to what Angela Hill was throwing at her. So once again, I'm taking Yan Xiaonan either by third round finish or by decision, but I do like her in this spot. if she does get taken down in that first round, that could get a little bit sketchy. But I think after that, it's going to be harder and harder for Gadelha to get her down. And even if she gets her down, I think it's going to be even harder for her to keep Xaionan down. And that's another positive as to why I think that Yan went over to Team Alpha Male to get solid looks when it comes to these wrestlers too. So that's something that she should be able to take into this fight and should help and benefit her too. So lastly, I love the line on her too. Currently at -135, which is great. I'm probably going to play her. I'll wait and see if the name value of Claudia Gadelha really helps shorten that line even more. But even at this point, I like Xaionan, and I even like her all the way up to -150. To be honest, -170 even. I don't mind that either. But yeah, -135 is a great line on Xaionan. So lastly, let's wrap it up. I got Xaionan either third round TKO or decision. Heinisch versus Brendan Allen. This line is pretty much at a pick'em now. So we had Brendan Allen open up around the -150 range, and it's slowly come down. And as of today, which is Sunday before fight week, it's a pick'em, and it makes absolute sense because both guys are, they have a style that it pretty much puts them on par with one another. So let's start off with Brendan Allen, who's coming on who has a crazy streak going right now. His last loss was to Anthony Hernandez, which was a 5-round war in LFA for the title over there. That was a great fight. Obviously, Brendan Allen came up on the short end there, and that's when we really got like the legit fluffy Anthony Hernandez, who unfortunately doesn't find himself in the UFC anymore. But if we saw that Anthony Hernandez in the UFC, we would see him be easily a top 15 guy. But his durability just was not up to par in the UFC. But that was a great back and forth fight. And then after that, it took about 2 more fights for us to see Brendan Allen go out there and get the LFA title. Fought 3 times for LFA after that Anthony Hernandez fight. Got onto the Contender Series and then went out there, beat Aaron Jeffrey, rear naked choke in the first round. And then we saw him go out there, beat Kevin Holland, Tom Breeze, and Kyle Daukaus, the latter being a late replacement for Ian Heinisch, who had withdrawn from that fight. So that was back in June, and then they decided to still go out there and continue to book this fight with Heinisch. I believe there was like a long-standing rivalry between the two guys because they were both in LFA. They were close to fighting each other, and then Heinisch gets the call up to the UFC, and then Brendan Allen obviously follows shortly thereafter. Both guys are tremendously talented. Obviously, Brendan Allen is rolling a little bit more now since he hasn't really caught an L in the UFC. His fight against Kevin Holland, he was close to catching that first L. Kevin Holland had him in some pretty tough spots in that first round, and Brendan Allen persevered. He fought through that very nasty cut that Kevin Holland was able to open up on him, and then we eventually got that rear naked choke in the second round. The Tom Breeze fight, Tom Breeze had a little bit of a gaffe. He tried getting this fight to the ground, tried dragging it to the ground, and then eventually found himself on his back. And then Brendan Allen did some solid work there in terms of trying to pull off submissions. After ditching the submissions, he went out with some ground and pound to finish off that first round, and he got a finish with 13 seconds left in that first round. So that was a big win for him too against Tom Breeze, who, in my opinion, is one of the top fighters in that division. And then the Kyle Daukaus fight, man, that was close. Those first 2 rounds, he did a lot of good work with his elbows from on top. Obviously, both guys were primarily jiu-jitsu guys, but we did see Brendan Allen get the better of it in the first 2 rounds. In the third round, though, we saw Kyle Daukaus pretty much control that, have back control for the majority of that third round until maybe the last 20 or 30 seconds where Brendan Allen was able to spin out and land some pretty big shots to finish off the fight there. So I thought Brendan Allen won that fight 29-28, closer than it should have been, especially, going up against a UFC newcomer who, albeit was undefeated coming into the UFC, so I don't think it was too bad of a fight for him. But the Ian Heinisch fight is going to be a little bit tougher. Heinisch is coming off a victory over Gerald Meerschaert where he knocked him out within just over a minute. But before that was on a 2-fight skid to Derek Brunson and Omari Akhmedov. I did have Ian Heinisch as a heavy play against Derek Brunson, as I truly thought he was the truth. Didn't turn out that way. Brunson got the better of him there. Same with Omari Akhmedov. But one thing that I found with Ian Heinisch, his fighting style is really all in his movements. Like he moves a lot. His cardio seems to be decent, but technically he doesn't really seem to be all there. Before the Gerald Mearshart fight, though, I do believe he went over to Thailand to get some work over there with Tiger Muay Thai. And it seemed to translate as he went out there and obviously knocked out Gerald Mearshart. My question though is how does it work with the rest of his game if the fight does go longer too? And I think Brendan Allen being the bigger guy here too kind of gives the advantage a little bit more to Allen. We're talking about a 5'11" Ian Heinisch with a 72-inch reach, whereas Brendan Allen on the other hand 6'2" with the 77-inch reach. He is a big guy for the middleweight division, very very big guy for the middleweight division. So that's definitely going to have a little bit of a factor here. I think that the confidence in Brendan Allen's hands is probably what would allow him to be a much better fighter. Obviously, he's on a great streak right now, and obviously he was working over there at Rufus Sport, so that was big for him too. But what we've noticed, if you go to his Instagram page, is that he's actually been training down at Sanford MMA for the last several weeks. So getting different looks, there's a huge plot of fighters there that are in high level leagues in ONE FC, in the UFC, in Bellator. So Sanford MMA is definitely producing a lot of high level talent, and I think he really went down there to get a better look or get better looks, different opponents, different types of skill sets, and go in there and try to up his game. I'm sure he's still over there with the Rufus Sport guys too, but at least for the majority of this camp, it looks like he's been down there in Florida getting work with Henry Hooft and that team. So I think that's nothing but positive for him. Ian Heinisch, on the other hand, it looks like he's over there in Vegas getting some work at Extreme Couture. That seems to be his base right now. So that's just the coaching tip on the side there. I would have to give this slight advantage to Brendan Allen for possibly getting better looks down there in Florida. I wonder how much confidence they've been able to instill in his striking too, because again, like I said a little bit earlier, I think that's where he needs to polish up a little bit more to be able to be a little bit more dominant. Obviously, he does his best work when he's on the ground. If he's able to get the fight there, he should be able to have some success with Ian Heinisch, who we have seen submitted in the past by Marcus Perez back in LFA. But otherwise, we have seen him take him down, not with relative ease, but not the hardest either. We saw Derek Brunson get him down. We saw Omari Akhmedov get him down. And I think Brendan Allen would also be successful in getting Heinisch down if that's where he wants to go. But the longer that this is on the feet, you got to think it kind of serves Heinisch a little bit more advantage if it is on the feet. We'll see him kind of, jumping around, hopping around on his tippy toes, running in every now and then with a couple shots to try to land. But I think that's where Brendan Allen is going to try to clinch onto Heinisch and try to drag this fight to the ground. I do lean with the grappler more often than not, and the guy with the better grappling, in my opinion, here is Brendan Allen, especially when it comes to the jiu-jitsu realm. I think he'd have success with kind of holding Heinisch down and getting the better of the transitions, possibly getting his back, controlling some time there as well too. Heinisch, I still have a little bit of questions on, we did see him have success in that third round against Omari Akhmedov later in the round, but there is still some question marks as to why he was getting hit as much as he is. He is hittable for sure. That's something that we have to notice. But I don't know, man. This is a very, very tough fight. I absolutely agree with the pick'em line here. I don't know if I'll even be betting this fight. I do lean on the Brendan Allen side. Like I said, I do think we'll see some more developments from him. I think a lot of people are going to put flack on his fight with Kyle Daukaus, going a full 3 rounds with the UFC newcomer, and then obviously giving up that third round the way that he did. But that's not Heinisch's game. He's not going to, be controlling Brendan Allen from his back in the third round like that. I think Allen does have solid cardio too. Heinisch has some good cardio too. He was working over there in Colorado for the most part, but now obviously he's down in Vegas. This is a tough fight. This is going to be a pass for me all in all. I'm really looking for glaring spots for me in terms of guys I really want to bet on, and this fight is just a toss up. Like the Feely and Mitchell fight, I did have a good feel on Andre Feely there. And, I was happy with getting the slightly plus money there. But moving forward, I don't know if I'd take a shot on a fight that I see as that close anymore. And this is one of those fights that's super, super close for me. So I like Brendan Allen. I think he's going to, him being the bigger guy, hopefully we see some improvement in his stand-up. Even if he just has, simple basics, 1-2s down the middle, I think that would be very effective against a guy like Heinisch, who moves a lot, isn't super technical himself. But if he's able to stifle him on the end of his jab, end of his two, I think that would really demoralize Heinisch. So I'm going with Allen, hoping that we see some more improvement on the stand-up, but he should get the better of the ground as well, too, if we see it get there. And I think he's strong enough to kind of drag this to the ground, or even, get this to a clinch position up against the cage where Heinisch gives up his back, and then we see kind of Allen, jump on the back or something, or even just drag this fight to the ground as best as possible. But yeah, I like Brendan Allen. I think he gets it probably a decision, just more control time. Heinisch is kind of durable from what I say too. I wouldn't be surprised either if we do get a Brendan Allen submission. I'm not completely ruling that out, but I do think we'll see Brendan Allen get this via decision, just through control, the grappling, the jiu-jitsu. I think that's where we see this fight play out for the majority of the time. So I'm going with Brendan Allen via decision. Raoni Barcelos versus Khalid Taha. We got minus 325 on Raoni Barcelos and plus 250 on Khalid Taha. Let's start off with Taha, who's coming off a victory over Bruno Silva back at UFC 243 in October. So we're talking about over a year since he's been out of the cage, and he was actually scheduled to fight Jack Shore this weekend. However, Jack Shore pulls out. In steps Raoni Barcelos. In my opinion, just as tough, if not tougher, of a matchup than Jack Shore. So Taha is on a 2-fight winning streak. He did make his UFC debut on short notice against Nad Narimani at featherweight, which is not his weight class. And we saw the absolute strength and size advantage of Nad Narimani come into play there, as he was able to pretty much drag Khalid Taha down as often as he wanted, clinch him up against the cage, pretty much overpower him the entirety of that fight. Then when we saw him at his true natural weight class in the UFC, he knocked out Boston Salmon in 25 seconds. Beautiful combination. And then Bruno Silva, that's a fight where the second round, he pretty much got held down the entire time. And then in the third round, it seemed like Bruno Silva's gas tank started to catch up to him. And, there was a unfortunate exchange that let Bruno Silva almost give up his back, almost gave up the rear naked choke. He spins, and then Khalid Taha locks up the arm triangle choke. Beautiful finish with 2 minutes left in the fight. If that had gone to a decision, we probably would have seen it go given to Khalid Taha, as I think he won the first round. It was definitely a second round for Bruno Silva, but the way things were going in that third round, it was definitely a Taha round. But now with Raoni Barcelos, I think he's fighting a guy that's much more dangerous. Let's talk about the skills of Taha specifically, though. I think he has solid striking. It seems like more often than not, he wants to go out there and just try to knock you out. If the submission comes, just like, 2 out of his last 4 fights, he was able to pull off submission victories. But more often than not, you see him going out there and try to impose his will on the feet, trying to wing big shots or solid leg kicks and try to get you out that way. That's not going to work at the higher level in the UFC. And unfortunately for him, he's already touching the higher level in Raoni Barcelos. Barcelos is one of those guys that I truly believe is going to be in the top 5, top 10 of their division if they're a little bit more active. Other guys that I think of that are kind of similar like that are like Movsar Evloev, Damir Ismagulov, Magomed Ankalaev. If these guys were more active, we would see them much closer to the title shots or at least title contention. And I truly believe that Raoni Barcelos is right there. Let's switch over to Raoni Barcelos. He is on a 4-fight winning streak within the UFC, but in his career overall, he's on an 8-fight winning streak. He's only lost 1 fight ever to a guy named Mark Dickman, where he lost via submission in the second round. But since then, he's picked up wins over notable names like Bobby Moffitt. That was pre-UFC for both guys. Dan Morit. Again, I believe that was pre-UFC for both guys. And then he steps into the UFC, knocks out Kurt Holloway in a wonderful fight where he got to showcase pretty much all sides of his game. But the uppercut at the end was a beautiful finish for him. Chris Gutierrez, he choked him out. Carlos Watson choked him out too. That was actually a fight where he was supposed to fight Said Nurmagomedov that night. Nurmagomedov pulls out. Watson steps in on short notice. Unfortunate short notice fight for him. And then we do see Barcelos eventually go out there and fight Said Nurmagomedov and get the decision victory there. He was actually he was scheduled to fight Cody Stamann back in March before the whole COVID thing hit. That would have been a great fight for him to actually like burst onto the top 15, get a solid victory, if he was able to get past Stamann, that is, get a solid victory there and really showcase what kind of fighter he is. But unfortunately, here he is now against Khalid Taha, who in my opinion is a little bit of a step back from Said Nurmagomedov. But during these COVID times, it's interesting to see how these guys react. So Taha was actually supposed to fight Jack Shore, like I said. So I find it kind of interesting that Raoni Barcelos was more than willing to jump in on short notice here, since like he's a high level fighter. It's not often that you see high level fighters take short notice fights like this. Like another one that really kind of caught me off guard is when Robbie Lawler stepped in on short notice, I believe, to fight Neil Magny. Like those types of fighters, it's very shocking to see them step in on short notice. Again, especially with Raoni Barcelos, who in my opinion is just knocking on the top 15, top 10 door. Now to step in and fight a guy in Khalid Taha who has, in my opinion, a very minimal path to victory in terms of trying to knock out Raoni. And I truly believe that we'll see Raoni, once again, just like the Kurt Holobaugh fight, showcase of a diverse skill set. I think the Kurt Holobaugh fight is kind of the closest resemblance to how this fight might look, where we'll see Raoni Barcelos kind of, use his Muay Thai, try to fade or try to get Khalid to think that this is going to be a stand-up fight, and then he goes out there and pulls off, a takedown of some sort. I love his takedowns. I love his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, too. Barcelos is pretty much as close to a full package as we get for an MMA fighter, and I truly think that he has all the skills to go out there and capture that strap. The only issue here, unfortunately for him, though, he's 35 years old, so if he wants to get it done, now is the time. He'll be 36 in May of next year, so the clock is ticking on him, so he's really going to have to go out there and get moving and get these fights under his belt, considering that Taha is about 8 years younger than him, so that's something to keep in mind. But we haven't seen any signs of slowing down for Raoni Barcelos. Until we see that, I'm going to be on his train. Yeah, he's minus 325 here, and I'd say he's more of a parlay piece than playing him straight. I personally like him to give us better value on any other spot on the card that we're looking at. If there's any other fight that you want a little bit more value on, Barcelos, in my opinion, is a solid spot to go out there and parlay with. But, you don't see much in resistance from Khalid Taha when it goes to him fighting wrestlers. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in that fight against Nadner Amani, as I truly believe that he was just outstrength. He was just out of his weight class in that fight, so that's unfortunate. But the Bruno Silva fight, that second round, looked very sketchy for Taha, and I think that Barcelos will be able to do the same, if not worse, to Khalid Taha, if he had gotten him to the ground. So I like Barcelos to win this fight. I could see him getting a finish as well too, maybe a second or third round sub. But yeah, I really like him. I hope he's in good shape, especially with him taking it on short notice. I don't see why he would take it on short notice if he wasn't in shape, especially considering the run that he's on right now and how close he is, especially with him originally scheduled to fight Cody Stamann, who was a ranked opponent at the time. You got to think that Barcelos knows he's near the top, so he's got to be in shape to go out there and fight Khalid Taha. So I'm going with Barcelos. I think he gets it done probably second or third round submission. But yeah, I love Barcelos in this spot, and I can't wait to see him grow. So once again, I got Raoni Barcelos via submission. Andrei Arlovski versus Tanner Boser. We got minus 255 on Boser and plus 215 on Andrei Arlovski. And this is an intriguing fight just based on both of their styles, considering how volume heavy these guys are in terms of the amount of, how much they move and how much they're able to really cover the cage, especially at heavyweight. So let's start off with Andrei Arlovski. crazy the type of career that Andrei Arlovski has had. People were ready to write this guy off all the way back in 2011 when he suffered, what was it, four straight losses, three of them getting pretty much brutally knocked out. And then in that amount of time, he was able to put together four straight wins. He had a no contest sprinkled in there against Tim Sylvia for an illegal soccer kick. Then he went to WSOF, fought Anthony Johnson at heavyweight, which was so weird that Anthony Johnson was willing to go all the way up there. Lost the decision there, and then was able to string together two straight wins and found himself back in the UFC, where he was able to go on a 4-fight winning streak over Brennan Schaub, Bigfoot Silva, Travis Brown, and then Frank Mir. And he was pretty much one fight away from a title shot until he ran into Stipe Miocic, who then went on to get a title shot against Fabricio Verdum and claim the heavyweight title. So just think about if he went out there and actually beat Stipe Miocic. You're talking about Andrei Arlovski getting a title shot in 2016. I don't think a lot of people would have predicted that, back in 2011 when people were just telling this guy to already retire. But here he is, So after that Stipe Miocic loss, he went on a 5-fight losing streak, managed to pull up 2 decision victories over Stefan Struve and Junior Albini, then lost 4 straight, well, 3 technically, considering that Walt Harris tested positive for steroids, and that fight got changed to a no contest, and now in his last 3, he's 2-1. He had a pretty much a picture-perfect performance against Ben Rothwell, where he went out there and outstruck him by a large amount. I just want to confirm that number because I remember seeing it and thinking, I was like, wow, it was that much. But once you really watch the fight, you truly see it. He outstruck him 152-70, so more than doubled the output that was coming back from Ben Rothwell's side. Then the Jairzinho Rozenstruik fight, we know what happened there. Jairzinho just has renegade bombs in his hands, and he landed that beautiful counter left hook that pretty much face planted Andrei Arlovski 30 seconds into the fight, and then after that went out there and beat a up and coming prospect in Philippe Lins, who a lot of people were confident in and who was also a minus 200 favorite going into that fight. So that's something to keep in mind there. Arlovski showed in that fight though that he can still hang with some of these guys that don't necessarily have the knockout power to get him out of there quickly. And even with that said, you got to look into his chin durability. So the last time he was knocked out before Jairzinho Rozenstruik was Francis Ngannou, but since then, so that was 2017 January, and it took until just close to 3 years later for him to get knocked out again, and he fought some heavy punches in between that amount of time as well. And then in the Philippe Lins fight, he showed a great amount of durability and took some huge shots from Philippe Lins, but he was still in it and pretty much ready to fight for that full 15 minutes and still came out with a decision victory there. So he looked good in that fight. He still mixes it up well. He moves well, especially at his current age of 41, I should say. I don't even know why I said 30, but 41 years old at heavyweight to be moving as much as he is, to be as flexible as he is, still getting leg kicks up there like it's nothing, moving well, leg kicking as well. It's not just all hands. When he's just crashing forward with hands, it's just not hands. He still has kicks that he likes to back it up with, try to switch it up with. It's pretty obvious that he likes to keep most fights on the feet, so this is pretty much a tailor-made matchup for him in terms of going in there with somebody else who's pretty keen on keeping the fight on the feet. But Arlovski has really, still impressed me, and a lot of people did not think he'd be fighting in 2020, let alone 2021 coming right up, that he's still going to be, up there in the heavyweight division and having some good performances and pulling off victories over guys that are much younger than him who seem to, they were favorites going into that fight. So this Tanner Boser fight, let's talk about Tanner Boser a little bit, who's, only a couple fights into his UFC career, started off with a victory over Daniel Spitz, then lost to Cyril Gane, who, that's a tough fight to go with because Cyril Gane is pretty much Tanner Boser, but much more explosive, much more volume, much more power. So it's it was a tough test for Tanner Boser to go out there and get a victory there. Then we see Tanner Boser go out there and knock out Philippe Lins after he lost to Andrei Arlovski, I believe. Yeah, that was only about a month and a half afterwards for Philippe Lins, where he got knocked out by Tanner Boser. And then he goes out there and finishes Rafael Pessoa with a beautiful, it was like a punch that kind of pretty much landed in Pessoa's eye and rendered him defenseless. He dropped to the ground, and we saw Tanner Boser go out there and pretty much ground and pound him to a finish halfway through the second round. Now here with Andrei Arlovski, I think a lot of people are going to be banging on Tanner Boser to go out there and win this fight via inside the distance. There are no current lines on that prop, but I personally like the decision prop a little bit more. But with that said, it's still a close fight. I don't mind the minus 250 line. I still think that Boser does win. His consistency and willingness to go out there and continuously look for leg kicks really allows him to open up his hands and the rest of his work. Whether it's the jab to the body and then coming with the overhand right afterwards, but the leg kicks are the main goal for his game plan, in my opinion. I think he's going to be very successful with that here against Andrei Arlovski. Again, Arlovski likes to move a lot, has good footwork, but I think that, if Boser targets those legs nice and early, he should be able to slow down Arlovski a little bit and really start to do work with his hands. I'm buying into the durability of Arlovski, which is why I would rather go with Boser to win by decision rather than inside the distance. And Boser isn't, he's not notorious for actually getting finishes. He's more of a decision guy. He does have a win via leg kicks that took almost 4 rounds of work to actually get that finish. Keep in mind, but then obviously the Philippe Lins was a little bit of an outlier for him to land such a beautiful shot. It was an overhand right to the just back of the ear of Philippe Lins that put him on Queer Street, and then we saw him go out there and put his hands together. Beautiful combination to finish that fight. And then the Rafael Pessoa one, I think it was just like a bullseye shot with that left hook that he landed right on the eye of Rafael Pessoa that pretty much rendered him defenseless, and then he was able to get the ground and pound there. But I don't think that people should buy into the quick finishes of Tanner Boser going into this Arlovski fight, because I do think that Arlovski, he moves a lot better than these guys. I think Arlovski throws a little bit more than Philippe Lins does as well, so that's something that Boser is going to have to worry about here. But Boser, in my opinion, throws a little bit more than Philippe does. He sets his shots up very well. A lot of people are saying that he should go down to light heavyweight just based on his size, and the fact is that he cuts no weight to get to heavyweight, and he seems like roughly only 20 or so pounds away from that the light heavyweight limit. So he weighed in at 235 against Rafael Pessoa, 235 against Philippe Lins as well too. He was 246 against Siragan, but it seems like he's slowly starting to come down in weight. Another guy that this kind of reminds me of is Chris Daukaus, who won a couple of weeks ago. He is slimming the hell down, and it's definitely working out for his speed and his movement. So I think Tanner Boser is kind of taking the same type of approach. Maybe not go down to 205, but use the lack of weight that you have and use the speed advantages that you get from the lack of weight, and try to go out there and have solid performances against your opponents. So again, Arlovski makes fights closer than they should be, hence why he won that Philippe Lins fight. But I think that Boser has a better overall game than Philippe Lins. Again, centered around the leg kicks, which allows him to open up his hands, and I truly think that's going to be for the key here for Tanner Boser. I like Boser to win this fight by decision. I think he has a solid shot here. Minus 250, I don't mind that spot. I think he's a solid parlay piece, if anything. Maybe take the shot on him straight up at minus 250. Not a bad idea either. But again, Arlovski does make fights a little bit closer than they are. But I truly believe that Boser has all the chops to make it not as close as Arlovski has done with like the Philippe Lins fights or any of the other fights in his past. So I'm going with Tanner Boser to win this fight via decision, and this is a solid spot for him to get a legit name under his belt, and really announce himself in the heavyweight division as well, and distance himself a little bit more from that Siragan loss that he took in his second fight in the UFC. So, lastly, once again, I'm going Tanner Boser to win this fight via decision. Time for the main event. We got the returning Thiago Santos, who hasn't competed since he fought John Jones for the title and lost a split decision back at UFC 239, I want to say it is. Yeah, 239. So it's been over 50 months since we've seen him compete, close to 16 months. He's going up against the ever-tested and never aging, I should call it, Glover Teixeira. Let's go over the odds real quick. It's minus 220 for Thiago Santos, plus 180 for Glover Teixeira, who now finds himself on the better end of a 4-fight winning streak. Beating the young guns, if you want to call it that, Karl Roberson, Iwan Kutilaba, Nikita Krylov, and then Anthony Smith last time around in a fight where complete beatdown after that, pretty much the midway point of that second round. So I am recording this on the Thursday before fight week. So the odds may have shifted at this point in time. And I did put a poll out there to get a better grasp of what the public is thinking when it comes to this fight, or who at least they think is going to win this fight. And let's go over that poll real quick. So it's been close to 24 hours since I put it out. And in terms of the results, close to 200 votes. We got 9 minutes left in the poll, which is hilarious. But close to 200 votes. We got 70% for Thiago Santos and 30% for Glover Teixeira. And I'm just quickly retweeting it out there to see if I can get any more by the time this breakdown finishes, since we got 8 minutes left in it. But yeah, let's go over Thiago Santos first and foremost. So like I said, he's coming off a loss to John Jones, a split decision loss, a very close fight, a fight that, not a style that not a lot of people predicted him to go in there with. That's a fight where I believe I had John Jones inside the distance as my main play, and it was probably one of the most infuriating performances that you could ever see. Especially from somebody that considers themselves to be the GOAT. And I understand wanting to go out there and kind of just sling it out in, your opponent's realm to kind of just showboat a little bit more. John Jones was saying he wanted to go out there and just like compete in the Muay Thai realm to out Muay Thai a Muay Thai fighter. And that's kind of been his, MO for a lot of his performances, going out there and grappling against Xaionan, or going out there and just even grappling against Daniel Cormier as well. He wanted to show off that he could take him down. But when you see a fighter as hurt as Thiago Santos, we know that Thiago Santos tore his ACL in that fight, absolutely butchered his knee, yet John Jones is still going out there and making this fight a lot closer than it should have been. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was the second, maybe third round where we saw Thiago Santos start to limp and start to hobble a bit on that knee, and that's, it was pretty evident that John Jones was aware of that as well. Jones went for a takedown in the first round, but never decided to go to the grappling after that, because I think a lot of people are convinced that if John Jones decided to get that fight to the ground, he was more than likely going to be able to get the finish there, whether it's ground and pound or a submission of some sort. But he just didn't decide to go to it. And we saw a pretty level-headed Thiago Santos, considering the fact that his knee was torn up. We still saw him throwing leg kicks out there, still saw him throwing those blitzing combinations, but he was a little bit more reserved than we're used to seeing him. In the Jimmy Manuel fight, we saw him drop and rock Jimmy Manuel pretty much right off the bat and just go guns blazing. That's kind of what his style is. But we saw, even in the Jan Blachowicz fight, we saw him a little bit more calculated, not really going guns blazing or anything like that, knowing that it could potentially go 5 rounds. But luckily for him, we saw him get the finish 39 seconds into that third round. And that was a great performance. And in my personal opinion, that's probably the best performance that we've seen from him. I say that because in the John Jones fight, yeah, we saw a good performance from him, but I also think that it's the diminishing talent of John Jones that we were seeing in that fight too. Just as we saw him go to a close fight with close-ish fight with Anthony Smith, even how we saw him go with a close fight with Dominic Reyes, and then when we saw Dominic Reyes go out there and fight Jan Blachowicz, we saw him get put out and completely styled on for the majority of that fight up until the point he got finished. So I think we might see the same thing here with Thiago Santos, and not to add to the fact that this is going to be the first time we're seeing Thiago Santos come back after a huge and pretty severe knee injury. Like I said, that ACL injury, it can hobble and really debilitate a lot of people's careers after they come back from them. I'm trying to think off the top of my head one of the fighters that it's happened to, but there are a ton of fighters that, they've had severe knee injuries and they've never come back really looking the same. And this is a tough test to come back to against Glover Teixeira, who's, he's going to be there. He is a durable fighter. A lot of people want to shit on the fact that, Glover Teixeira is a chinny fighter. He hasn't been knocked out in nearly 3.5 years when Alexander Gustafsson finished him in the 5th round of a very competitive fight. Since then, like I said, Glover Teixeira has looked pretty damn fucking good. Carl Roberson rocked him, trying to get him to the ground. Obviously, we saw Glover Teixeira overcome that and then get Carl Roberson down, and all within 3 minutes and 21 seconds. He got rocked, took Roberson down, took full mount pretty much immediately, and then eventually sunk in that arm triangle choke. Beautiful finish there. And then Iwan Kutilaba, had a little bit of success with that spinning back fist, landed perfectly on Glover Teixeira. Glover rocked a bit, didn't get dropped, but he did get rocked, and then we saw him come back and finish off Iwan Kutilaba in that second round too. The Nikita Krylov fight was a taxing fight. We saw that a lot of it play out in the grappling realm, and we saw more often than not Glover Teixeira getting the better of the positions against a much younger Nikita Krylov. And then in the Anthony Smith fight, he almost pulled off like a Homer Simpson type approach, where for that first 7.5 minutes, he allowed Anthony Smith to, he didn't allow, I'll give Anthony Smith the benefit of the doubt there, where he was just, landing pretty much at will. He was a much quicker fighter. 1-2 crisps down the middle. His jab was looking really good. His leg kicks were looking really good too. But then once that activity started to catch up with Anthony Smith, there was no way he was going to be able to go that pace for 25 minutes. And, it's going to take a lot more than that to put away Glover Teixeira. Once that started to catch up to Anthony Smith, that's where we saw Glover Teixeira start to, take off. Yeah, he's a little bit rudimentary with his striking in terms of, just having a straight right, a left hook, and sometimes a rear uppercut, but it's effective at times. When guys are immobile and guys are tired of trying to beat the shit out of Glover Teixeira turns it on and he starts to make these guys drown. He starts to make them swim and then they start to drown. And that's what Glover Teixeira is known for. He just turned 41 years old yesterday, so I believe it's October 28th. He turned 41 and put out an Instagram video. The guy looks great. He looks in phenomenal shape. And luckily for these older guys, the 205 and heavyweight are kind of divisions where you can be the older guy and you can still go out there and get some victories. It's middleweight and down where you really have to be in your youthful peak, in my opinion, to be at the top of the weight class. But luckily for Glover Teixeira, this is a perfectly timed fight for him to go out there and face Thiago Santos, who, again, like I said, is coming off a very significant injury. That ACL injury is just not good. They were scheduled a couple times post-COVID now to fight. Glover tested positive for COVID in their September fight. Santos tested positive for COVID in their October fight. And now here they are once again a month later. Hopefully, knocking on wood, they don't contract the COVID in this amount of time between the breakdown and the fight actually happening. But I love Glover Teixeira at this price, and it seems like his price is only going to continue to get better. Thiago Santos minus 220 coming off a severe knee injury, and I think it's kind of like the Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz fight. I think a lot of people are overstating how good Dominic Reyes was and how good Thiago Santos was because of how close of fights they had with John Jones. I kind of understand that narrative, but again, John Jones just doesn't really seem to be putting his foot on the gas like he used to during the pre-USADA, if you even want to call it that. Maybe it's the lack of testosterone or drugs that are in his body now that are making him fight closer to the competition that the 205 or closer to the level of competition that the 205 division is at. But Glover is always going to be there. He's always going to be chugging along. We know he's fully there. We know he can take a shot. He got dropped in that Carl Roberson fight, but again, like I said, the last time he got finished was 3.5 years ago against Alexander Gustafsson. And Thiago Santos hasn't notoriously been like a one-punch knockout power kind of guy. It's an overwhelming amount of strikes that he has to land on you to really get you out of there. He's not like, dink, and sleeping guys. That's not what's happening. And I think that Glover Teixeira could handle whatever Thiago Santos is going to be throwing his way. And again, this is 5 rounds. This is Glover's realm. He could go that full 5 rounds. He could make Thiago Santos swim and drown. I'm very very confident in Glover here. I love him at the dog odds, and I love that his odds continue to get better. And one more thing about Thiago Santos, his fight against Jamey Manuwa, rocks him right off the bat, and what does Jamey Manuwa do? He takes him down with relative ease too. Let's not forget about that. But obviously it was a little bit harder for him to keep him down. But I expect if Glover Teixeira gets Thiago Santos down, he has probably one of the best top pressure, top jiu-jitsu games in the game. Especially at 41 years old, you still see him floating above guys, passing guards, taking backs, trying to stay one step ahead of his opponents whenever they're trying to shift. In the Nikita Krylov fight, he had a beautiful back take. It's crazy how mobile this guy still is on the ground at 40 and 41 years of age, and I still think he's going to be able to, he will be able to control Thiago Santos on the ground, and I think he could make Thiago Santos start to panic, start to stress out, start to gas out, and then we see Glover Teixeira really start to take over in the later rounds. But I love Glover in this spot. I love him by submission. I can't wait to see what that prop is, and especially the more money that continues to come in on Thiago Santos here, the more confident I'm going to be in Glover Teixeira. So I'm personally waiting. It's taken the best of me right now not to pull the trigger on Glover Teixeira at plus 180. I can get him at plus 182 currently at Bookmaker. I'm just going to sit back. I truly believe that we'll see that plus 200 line at minimum, and that's where I'm going to take my shot. I'm taking at least a 2-unit shot here on Glover Teixeira. I'm happy to share that with you guys right now, but I'm more than happy there. And considering the poll results, so we got final results, 218 votes, 72% of people are on Thiago Santos, and 28% of people are on Glover Teixeira. To me, that makes me think that the odds are slowly going to get better on our guy Glover Teixeira. So I'm just going to wait it out and see what kind of line we get. But I love Glover in this spot. He's truly going to go out there and remind people that Thiago Santos is not a guy to bet on at this minus 220, possibly closing at minus 250 spot, coming off a major surgery. I love Glover here. So I'm taking Glover Teixeira, probably third round submission, maybe second round. I think he could get away with it too. But I love Glover to win this spot. Like I said, Glover Teixeira by second or third round submission. And those are the breakdowns. I hope you guys enjoyed them. I hope you guys can figure out what I made my lock of the night play. I'm not sure if I actually said it in the breakdown itself, but I'm personally waiting for a couple lines to come out still. Once again, make sure you guys check out the Patreon. The link is in the description below. That really helps your boy out. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment below regarding, what your picks and, if you disagree with anything that I had this week, make sure you guys do that as well. Check me out on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern with the Odds Crew. We're going to be doing the final weigh-in live stream. I'll be with my guys, Cody Saftik, MMA Prediction Guru, and Just Bleed MMA. And then lastly, on fight days, we're doing the MMA Lockcast Live, where I take all questions, comments, and concerns for the fights that are just about to go down. So I like to do a fight day stream now, get everybody revved up, ready to go, and maybe bring some eyes to some lines that people are overlooking too. So make sure you guys join me off for that. Your boy's busy. I got a lot going on. I'm trying to do all this for you guys, try to make this a full-time thing. The best way to help me do that is hopping on the Patreon. So once again, it's in the description below. Make sure you guys hit that for me. All right. I'm done. I'm out. I'll see you guys Friday on Odds HQ and then on fight day on my channel itself. Good luck on your bets this weekend. I'll see you then.